You're with the News at 1 on RTE Radio 1. We are bringing you an extended programme today to mark publication of the first report of the Tribunal of Inquiry into payments to politicians and related matters concerning solely the former Taoiseach, Mr Charles Haughey, at this stage. You'll recall us reporting earlier that at the time he became leader of Fianna Fáil, he actually owed AIB, Dame Street branch, 1.143 million, and then in his subsequent period as party leader he went on to live beyond his means to the tune of £9.1 million. But this is the thought that he offered the Irish people just a few short weeks after he became Taoiseach, at a time when the country was, well, many people would say, on its uppers.
As a community, we are living way beyond our means. I don't mean that everyone in the community is living too well. Clearly many are not, and have barely enough to get by. But taking us all together, we have been living at a rate which is simply not justified by the amount of goods and services we are producing.
And that was the former Taoiseach speaking in what many people consider to be a very inspirational appeal. He ordered the allocation of airtime on the national broadcaster RTE on, I think it was about the 9th of January in 1980, to make that appeal, and indicated that we were all going to tighten our belts. Well, in the event, I think nobody did, or at least Mr Haughey allowed a certain amount of slack in the case of his own. Charlie Bird is still with me. Charlie, you've found a section dealing with the payments by Ben Dunne.
Yes, I think this report, if it's damning of the late Charles Haughey, it is equally damning of Ben Dunne, of the former Dunne Stores boss. In section 2365, it says the tribunal's view is that Mr Dunne, first of all, it must be said, in relation to the McCracken Tribunal, Ben Dunne admitted that he'd given Charles Haughey a certain amount of money. In the Moriarty Tribunal, they unearthed that he had given Mr Haughey more money, a number of other payments. In relation to these payments, the tribunal says it is their view that Mr Dunne was at all times fully aware of all the payments which he made to Mr Haughey, and the tribunal cannot accept that he had any absence of recollection. It appears to the tribunal that Mr Dunne was selective in the information which he provided to the McCracken Tribunal and deliberately confined his disclosures to those payments which were discovered by that tribunal. Mr Dunne's approach to this tribunal was no different. He disclosed none of the payments to the tribunal, and on each occasion that the tribunal unearthed further payments, he pleaded ignorance through lack of recollection. So in other words, they're saying that Ben Dunne did not put his hands up. He did not give them the information which he had in his possession. And I think it will go on, and it is going to make very, very uncomfortable reading for Ben Dunne.
And Charlie, as well, actually, I think we have Ben Dunne on the line. Good afternoon to you, Ben Dunne.
Good afternoon.
Now, thank you for joining us. I appreciate that you haven't had a lot of time to absorb these findings.
You don't. What I have in my possession is what News at 1 sent to me. And in fact, that paragraph that Charlie was talking about there, 23-65.
Yes.
Now, I mean, that effectively, the chairman is effectively calling me a liar. And I've never been accused of being a liar before. I'm not a liar, and I did not tell lies to the tribunal. Sorry, I just want to switch this phone off.
Okay, and you're very adamant about that.
Oh, I think it's absolutely a disgrace. That the only comfort I get about it appears to the tribunal. There's at least a bit of daylight that he used the word appears.
Right, but just to break down that paragraph.
I'm putting it very simply.
Sure.
The tribunal have called me a liar. I dispute and I refuse to accept that. I am not a liar. I've come forward everything I've done in life. I've come forward, and I haven't hidden behind smoke screens. Which I did have, not a recollection of certain things. It wasn't that I was trying to cover up. I genuinely forgot. But look, I think it's a disgrace that one man, on his word, on no other, just on his opinion, and I hope it's a fully informed opinion,
well, now,
has decided to call me a liar.
Well, he doesn't use that word, but that's the construction you put on it.
I want to tell you what I use. I use common English, and if I was an ordinary person reading this, I'd be saying Ben Dunne is a liar. I've been accused of being a liar. That's the common way of reading what his report says.
Right, well, that's how you've always called things as you've seen them. And is it your contention that when you were asked questions, you told them all you knew.
Of course, I've always, any time I've asked a question, I've told what I knew.
And
I'll tell you what I have to do now. I've never been called a liar before. And I now must take stock and think about this.
yes,
And I think the chairman is going to have difficulty proving, when I go down the road, if I go down the road, proving that I was a liar. Because I never was a liar.
yes, and you.
I was a very sick man, and I never was a liar.
But you have the option.
And I'm
I suppose,
very, very upset and very annoyed. And for a man to take 10 years to accuse somebody of being a liar, I hope he understands the effect it's having on me. I still have my own mental problems, but I prided myself on the fact that I tell the truth. Not when push comes to shove, but any time I asked a question, I would give the honest answer.
Well, now, I want to read you something from another section. I'm not sure that we've sent you this one, but it talks about how it's already... I might as well read it because you
Look,
are...
to tell you the truth, you can read anything you want now.
Okay,
because
well,
you
you
can't
see,
go any lower than calling somebody a liar.
Right, but for the benefit of our listeners and to give them an understanding or a greater understanding as to why you're...
But I hope just one thing as well, that the listeners, I hope they understand, I'm getting this now hot off the press,
Sure,
and obviously I'm emotionally upset at the moment.
Right, that's accepted,
I just want to
Ben.
put in that little point,
Fine.
but I will answer the question.
Yeah, and this will take me probably close to a minute to read, but it's probably worth bearing with for the sake of our listeners and giving them their insight, and then you can come back at it.
Okay.
This is paragraph 2217. It has already been noted that the role of Mr. Ben Dunne was both substantial and crucial. Whilst it is accepted that Mr. Dunne was a courteous witness and one who regularly attended public sittings when requested to do so, the tribunal cannot accept what has been conveyed to it in submissions and medical reports furnished on his behalf to the effect that the several instances of further payments on his part discovered by the tribunal had eluded his memory. From careful observation of Mr. Dunne in evidence on several occasions, not least in his recollections of the earlier portion of dealings had in relation to the Dunne Trust, it appeared that he could be an astute and observant witness in respect of many matters, and given the high quality of assistance and advice at all times available to him, the tribunal cannot accept that all these successive transactions, and particular one so pivotal as the triple plan payment, were matters in respect of which he had no actual recollection. So that's what you're so exercised about, among other things.
No, look, in the fullness of time, maybe I will have to get my medical record public.
The triple plan payment amounted to
And I
£282,500
never
sterling.
remembered the triple plan payment.
Nearly £300,000 sterling. That's a half
But
a million
look,
euro, Ben.
if I had remembered it, I would have said I remembered it.
And was there any particular reason? I mean, look at it from another point of view. Could you possibly have gained by trying to hide things?
Look, I want to tell you one thing that I know. Any time I hid anything in my life, when I was using drugs, I hid it, and the only thing I done was lost ground. And any time you try to hide anything in life, it's backwards you go, not forwards.
And in fact, I think that's how you re-established your credibility when you came back from that episode in the States. You
And
put your
that's
hand
how
up.
I lead my life. And for the judge, who I respect, but I have grave doubts about him calling me a liar.
Well, he says he doesn't believe you, I suppose. Again,
Look, use the common man's language. He has decided to call me a liar. He has decided to call me a liar. But if necessary, I have other ways. If I have to, maybe I have to live with being called a liar.
you have the option, I think, of looking for a judicial review or some sort of thing.
I wouldn't bother my Barney looking for a judicial review.
Okay, Charlie
I tell you what I think. I think the report is very flawed when someone like me, with a medical history like me, with a bit of history that is well known for telling the truth, and all of a sudden somebody has said, I'm selective.
You believe that
and he doesn't take into account my medical reports.
Charlie?
Well, I think the listeners, maybe one thing should be pointed out to the listeners. At least we should ask Ben Dunne. He says this has all come as a surprise to him today, but my understanding is that the findings in relation to Mr. Dunne were sent to him, so he knew what was coming down the track and that he had an opportunity to send...
No, I'll tell you, Charlie, what was sent to me early on. It was what was sent to me that they found it, that my loss that my memory was my loss of memory wasn't credible, and then we sent them an addendum of my medical file, which went back, I think, to 1997 or 96, going back to 1992, and they responded back basically saying they'd give it full consideration. And having given it full consideration, they're saying they don't accept my medical file.
Well, what they're saying is that they're not accepting that in fact that you knew what they're saying is you knew about these payments that you had given to Mr. Haughey over the years and that you're well aware of them. And as you say yourself, the report is damning in relation to you. There's no doubt about that.
More damning than calling me a liar. But let the people decide at the end of the day. I can do no more. Chairman Moriarty has decided to call me a liar. I have to live with that.
That language is not in the report, to be fair.
I want to tell you, look, you read it any way you want. And the only difference is that I'm using it instead of other people brushing around it. If you're economical with what do they say?
Economical with the truth, I think.
If I had somebody being economical with the truth to me, if someone was economical with the truth with me, I'd say, get out, you're trying to tell me lies.
Okay.
That's how I deal with people who are dealing with me that way.
Looking back now, Ben, as Charlie said, you had a chance to look and respond to the draft conclusions. It seems like they haven't changed, and despite the representations you made.
I made no representation.
Sorry, I mean the responses that you gave. I don't mean representations in that sense. And it would appear as well, and I haven't come across it yet myself, maybe Charlie can help me, or perhaps Colin Keena. Do we know what, in some more detail about the famous involvement of Mr. Parker, the former chairman of the Revenue Commissioners?
All I can tell you about Mr. Parker, I know for a fact that Mr. Parker was lying in a stretcher in James's Hospital last night because he fell by an accident. And I think it's a terrible tragedy that a man who'd done a good job, a chairman of the Revenue Commissioners, he was put in an impossible position. He met me, he'd done nothing more or nothing less than that. Now, I don't know what the report said about him.
Charlie, have you found that
it says the setting up of that meeting was inappropriate by Charles Haughey. That is the main conclusion there. I mean, I think, again, for the listeners, it is worth pointing out, and maybe Mr. Dunne, you could also explain the background to it. I mean, Seamus Parker was the chairman of the Revenue Commissioners. He ended up working for Dunne Stores, I think, later.
He ended up earning 10,000.
But the reality is he was the chairman of the Revenue Commissioners. Yeah. Charles Haughey asked him to meet with the Dunne Stores people, I think, with you. What the report says that the setting up of that meeting.
I can't hear.
We've lost Charlie. No, we've lost the connection. Okay, look, can we pause it there? We'll be back with Charlie and other contributions in this extended edition of the News at 1 on the day the first report of the Moriarty Tribunal of Inquiry into Payments to Politicians has been issued. More after this break.